Okay guys, so we're going to continue on today with our reading of our chapter book, which remember is Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger by Louis Sachar. So last week we read a couple of chapters all the way up to when we learned about the crazy Mr. Gorf who took all of the kids' voices and stole them with his weird third nostril. And we're going to find out what happens next. That was definitely a little bit of a scary chapter. Remember, here's the picture of Mr. Gorf. And this is chapter 12, and it's called Nose. Chapter 12, Nose. Mr. Gorf locked the door. "I don't want any more interruptions," he said. Very quietly, Leslie slipped a piece of paper out of her desk. Then she felt around for a pencil. Mr. Gorf returned to the teacher's desk. He opened the top drawer and took out the class list. It had the names of all the children in the class, their parents' names, and their parents' home and work phone numbers. "Let's play a game," he said, speaking in his own normal French donkey with a sore throat voice. "The name of the game is Who Am I Now?" Leslie found the pencil. She held the piece of paper on her lap, where Mr. Gorf couldn't get it, and wrote "Help" in big letters, H-E-L-P. She had to get it to Louis, the yard teacher, right away. Mr. Gorf touched the tip of his nose. "Who am I now?" he asked. It was a girl's voice, soft and warm, with just a little bit of a giggle in it. Everybody looked at Rondi. "Rondi," said Mr. Gorf, and he opened up his briefcase and removed a portable phone. He dialed Rondi's home number. "Hello, Mommy," Mr. Gorf said into the phone, pretending to be Rondi and using her voice. "No, nothing's wrong. I just called to say I hate you. You're the worst mommy in the whole world. You're ugly and you smell bad. It's not fair. Out of all the mommies in the world, I got stuck with you." So he's pretending to be the students now, Mr. Gorf, and he's being so mean. I hope that they figure out what to do. Mr. Gorf hung up the phone. Rondi sat crying in her chair. Mr. Gorf touched his nose again. "Isn't this a good game?" he asked, sounding very much like a sick French donkey again. "Rondi is crying, and at home her mother is crying too," he laughed. "Ha, ha, ha. Too bad you won't ever be able to tell her you're sorry, Rondi." "Why won't she be able to tell her?" "That's right, because Mr. Gorf stole her voice." Leslie carefully folded the piece of paper into a paper airplane. There was one open window next to Sherry's desk. Mr. Gorf touched his nose again. "Who am I now?" he asked. Everyone tried not to look at Joe. Mr. Gorf called Joe's mother at work. "Hello, Mommy," he said. "I hate you. I wish you'd go away forever. Then maybe Daddy will marry someone else good." Oh, that's terrible. Mr. Gorf is just awful. Leslie knew she'd only have one chance with the paper airplane. It would take a perfect throw. She tossed the paper airplane toward the window. Mr. Gorf saw it. "Hey!" he shouted. The airplane sailed. Closer, closer, but then at the last second it made a sudden turn, hit the wall, and landed on the floor. Mr. Gorf laughed again. "Ha, ha, ha." He picked up the airplane and unfolded it. "Help," he sneered. "No one can help you now. You took my mommy away from me, and I'm going to take your mommies from you." He touched his nose. "Who am I now?" he asked. It was Leslie's voice. He started to dial her home phone number, but it was interrupted by a knock on the door. "Oh, Mr. Gorf," sang Miss Mush. "Yes," said Mr. Gorf, still in Leslie's voice. He touched his nose and cleared his throat. "Yes." This time he sounded like a donkey, with tonsillitis again. He touched his nose again. "Yes?" he asked in the pleasant voice he took from the Scottish gentleman. "It's me again," said Miss Mush. Miss Mush's voice was like two boots slashing through mud. "I baked you a pie, Mr. Gorf, to welcome you to Wayside School." Mr. Gorf sighed. "Ugh. You are very kind, Miss Mush," he said, in the Scottish voice. "But we are all quite busy at the moment. Perhaps another—" "It's best to eat it while it's still warm," said Miss Mush. "You probably don't get fresh pies very often, being a bachelor and all." "I really hate to disturb the class," said Mr. Gorf, "and I'll tell you what. I'll just come outside for a moment and you can hand it to me." He glared at the class, daring them to move, and then opened the door. "I hope you like pepper pie," said Miss Mush, and she smashed it in his face. Mr. Gorf turned around, and his face was covered with thick pepper cream. He started sneezing. Calvin laughed. "Hey, my voice is back," said Calvin. "Wait a second, this isn't my voice. I sound like Bibi." Mr. Gorf sneezed again. "I can talk," shouted Jenny. "But who am I?" Mr. Gorf sneezed again. "You're Mauricia," said Jason. Jason sounded like the gentleman from Scotland. Okay, so Miss Mush came to the door and she had her pie. She tricked Mr. Gorf and threw it in his face. And now he's sneezing from the pepper cream, and guess what? All of the voices are getting mixed up in the class. Mr. Gorf kept on sneezing. "Who might I be, Sonny?" Paul cackled. He sounded like somebody's grandmother. Todd barked. "Achoo!" Mr. Gorf sneezed so hard his nose flew off his face, and he screamed like a donkey and then ran out of the room. "Ugh, gross," said Jason. "Now I sound like Allison." Bibi said something in Italian. "Nobody panic," said Miss Mush. "Your voices are bouncing around trying to find where they belong. It might take a while, but soon you will all be back to normal." "How do you know?" asked Leslie, although she sounded like Paul. "And how do you know to smash that pepper pie in Mr. Gorf's face?" "I wasn't exactly sure," explained Miss Mush, "but when I came up the first time, I heard Kathy say, 'Have a nice day,' so either Kathy had decided to be nice to me for once, or Mr. Gorf was a mean teacher who stuck the children's voices up into his nose." She shrugged. "And I just didn't think Kathy could ever be nice." "Maybe if you learn to brush your teeth," muttered Kathy. Mr. Gorf's nose still lay on the floor. Miss Mush picked it up and put it in her apron pocket. "This will go good in the spaghetti sauce," she said. Ew. Soon all the children had their real voices back. Rondi and Joe called their mothers on Mr. Gorf's portable phone and told them that they loved them so much. While far away in a small village in Scotland, a man who hadn't spoken for 20 years turned to his wife and said, "Top of the morning to you, Tilly." The end. So that chapter ended so nicely. All the children got their voices back. I'm so glad. Tomorrow we will read about a new teacher. Hopefully she's nice. Make your predictions. Think if she's going to be a nice teacher or another mean teacher. And we'll see you back in a little bit.